What's going on, football fans? It's me, J.R. Clark. We're not live. We're recording this on Monday. This is Draft House. Obviously, I'm not Jimmy. I can't give you the really cool intro that Jimmy gives you. I can say that today, obviously being a special Draft House, that we have a very special guest with us. It's Eric Robinson from the Falcohoilc. I hope that y'all have read his stuff. If you haven't, I would encourage you to pause the video and go read this stuff. But before we bring Eric in, Mike, what's going on, buddy?
Hey man, this your boy Mike Dub, man, and this week's episode of You Guys Have Your Opinions, We Have Ours. We got a special Draft House edition this week. So before we get into the specials, before we get into another controversial draft week where we talk about a lot of different things, I think this is a good time to pause and say that you know what, if we have an opportunity to hypothetically talk about our Falcons, who they might have, who they might not have, then it's a good time because that means this is a
Mm-hmm.
organization of change. It's an organization that is changing right now, and again, there's no better place to talk about change than right here, pound for pound.
That's what, man.
Jr., talk
Well,
to these
let's, like
people.
I said, without further ado, let's go ahead and bring in Mr. Eric. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm
Well, I'm
glad to
glad
be
that you
on, man.
decided to jump on with us. And that, like I said before, before we got on, um, didn't just reach out to you for craps and giggles. Been following your work
Right.
for quite a while on the Falcoholic and on Twitter. And for anybody who is not following Eric, they need to, because he gives out very good scouting reports, very good tidbits. I even saw some like high school starter pack stuff going on that last night that had me going down memory lane, which was great. So, uh, Eric, if you want to give these folks a little bit of background on yourself, I'm not sure how many people of our uh, fan base, viewers, however you want to call it, are familiar with you. So, if you want to give some people some background.
Yeah, I've been a writer for about 6 years. Been with the Falcoholic for
Nice.
4 years, I want to say. Mainly focusing on draft stuff. I do a lot of stuff in during the season as well, but draft season is really when I start to roll back my sleeves and do some work. I'm a huge draft nerd. I love mock drafts. I do a mock draft every
Yep.
day. I don't care. It doesn't matter. There's no draft season is all
That's
year
it.
round. If we're being honest, I
That's right.
there is no such thing as it's too early for a mock
I,
draft.
I,
There's no such thing. But yeah, I love everything about, of course, football, writing about the Falcons, and I am a Falcons fan, but I do know how to take off the Falcons hat and criticize
yeah,
the
you
team when
got
they
to.
need it, when they deserve it, especially
Love
when
it.
they blow, especially when they blow a 25
Why
point
you have to
lead in the
go
Super
there?
Bowl,
Oh my
which
God, Lord.
still not over. I bring it up whatever episode I'm on. I could be talking about
Somehow you gonna
NBA and
bring it up.
somehow I
I
slip
got
it
you.
in.
Hey, and Eric, I'll be
That's
honest
it.
with you. I like it because it's a foundation point for
Right,
all of our hypotheses. It starts
Mm-hmm.
there,
it
to be
starts
honest
there.
with you. So no, you can
Absolutely.
bring it up. You can bring it up as much as you want because that's
Right,
why we get a chance to be talking
That's
heads
it.
as
right,
much as we do. I
right.
love it.
Especially when you're still seeing the
Oh
therapist
Lord,
twice a week
my
because
man
of
is
it.
going to see a
So,
therapist twice.
So wait a minute, pound for pound family. We got so wait a minute. Y'all ask yourself, wait a minute, that's a moment right there. This man said therapist twice a week.
That's
therapist.
it.
JR talks about his
Hey,
blood pressure.
look,
Doctors,
I'm
y'all see
calling,
what y'all
man.
doing to us?
My
Can y'all give us a winner? Can we get close to a winner?
I'm laying on the couch looking at the ceiling, just answering for like what I didn't
yeah,
do
why?
from the
Yeah, yeah.
football.
All you had to do, run it 3 times, kick a field goal, walked home, walked home.
Can't
That's all I'm
do
saying. Or
simple
I don't
things.
know, on the defensive side of the ball, you could have, got a stop, one stop.
Robert Alford
I
couldn't
mean,
call
Vic
his
Beasley
second
in the end
interception
zone,
of the game.
could have just anyway.
Yeah. Oh, he just wanted
Hey,
to
hey,
swat it.
hey,
No,
hey,
don't
hey,
swat
all
it.
right, so guys, let me break this up. Let's offer the guys some hope. All of our PTSD is being triggered right now. We've gone back years. We've
Oh,
talked about Super Bowls.
oh.
Uh, Jr., what do you
Okay.
got for us, man? There's a reason he's here today, and I don't think
No,
it's
you're right.
about
You're
talking
right.
about the past because my
They are
heart is
right.
now I'm getting heart problems.
All right. So the reason why I reached out and decided to reach out to Mr. Robinson here was for, as you say, the draft stuff. You talk about the being a draft nerd, I really feel like that is when I start to come alive per se. I enjoy the team building process as much, if not more, than the actual games themselves. Right. Uh, so the unofficial official kickoff of draft season is the Senior Bowl. Okay, that just took place this past weekend
Mhm.
in Mobile, Alabama, and this year, more important than any
Mhm.
other year so far, this might be the closest thing we have to a combine this year. And you, sir, were
Yeah.
down there live. And that was the reason why I decided to
Mhm.
reach out with you, would reach out to you, is because you were down there for the, what, 3 days of practice? Cool. Now, you didn't
Yep.
stay for the
Mhm.
game, right? No, which is fine.
Did not
Come to
stay
find
for
out,
the
that
game.
seems to be a pretty common deal. Because at that
Yes.
junction, all
Yes.
your interviews are over, all your, all that stuff is done.
Mm,
And
more
exactly,
interaction with the
and you
players
can
at that
catch,
point. So
yeah, you
a
can
lot of
catch the
writers get
film,
up.
like as far as the game goes.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
so
Right.
I guess the easiest softball question to ask you is, what was your experience down there? What is it like going down to the Senior Bowl?
Oh man, it was, for a guy that loves everything about the draft, loves the whole process of evaluating players. I was like a kid in a candy store, man. Of course, I had to deal with weird weather in Mobile, Alabama. One day it was cold, another day it was sunny, and saw little rainbows in the sky. Next thing you know, a wind came out of nowhere for like 2 days. So once you get past all of that, man, you see a little bit of everything, especially in that particular experience. And it was a unique year, of course,
Of
because
course,
we're
yeah.
still dealing with COVID. Normally, they would have the media kind of scattered about the stadium, but this particular year, they kind of put all the media in one section of the stadium. It said, "You stay here, you don't move anywhere,
Mm.
you see what you can see." So yeah, so it was a unique experience, but I was able to learn a lot. Even with the brief scouting background that I had, I attended scouting academy a couple years ago, so that kind of gave me my start as far as
Hmm.
how to look at players and what to look for when it comes to these players, because anybody can go to YouTube and look at a highlight and
Yeah,
say this
highlight
guy is
packages are
great.
amazing.
How everybody is great on the highlight package, but you can also pinpoint why is this receiver catching all
Hmm.
these passes down the field.
There
It's
we go.
because he can only
Right.
run one route. That's where the film comes into play. That's where evaluating a certain player. So yeah. So when it comes to that, I had fun. It was a great week, and the Falcons, for where they are as a team right now, in the
Hmm.
past with the previous regime, the Senior Bowl was used as a good hub for plucking a couple players here and there. And it remains to be seen if this new regime is going to go in that direction. I think it would be smart, of course, because these are your
Right.
more polished players coming out. These are your guys that's been starters for 3 or 4 years. A lot of them have been captains. A lot of them have been, All
Hmm.
Americans multiple times. So this is a good, to me, for a new regime that's getting their feet wet. I think
Cool.
this is a good hub to start.
Did by chance did you see any of our brass down there? I don't know. I don't know if they were recognizable enough to
I
recognize them across the field.
I it was hard, and I got those questions throughout the week. It was
Hmm.
hard to see anybody because those guys were directly across the stadium from the media, and they were literally
I got you. I got you.
quarantined away from us. So it was you knew every team had reps there.
Who
You
they
just
were
didn't
and
know
where
exactly
they were
who
per
was.
se.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm not
Right.
certain if Fontenot was there or even if Arthur Smith himself was there. I'm pretty positive they had a handful of scouts at the very least, but you had no clue exactly who they were because you were not allowed to be on
I
that
got you.
side of the stadium where we've been talking.
And actually, I'm glad you brought that up. And even though it's not like a big misnomer, I do think that having a Terry Fontenot whose background is more on the college scouting, part of the house. I think that he's familiar with these guys. And to be honest with you, all general managers are familiar with a lot of these guys
Right.
coming into the Senior Bowl. But I do think that having a Terry Fontenot, I think a lot of these guys have been on his radar. So even though I'm sure they may not have been, the brass being, we've been able to see the brass or whatever. But I do think that I'm comfortable. I'm comfortable with the guys that whoever we do send, because if there's one area where I trust our general manager, so forth, and that's just this college part of the draft, because again, like we talk every year, man, it's such a critical. We have so many critical needs going into next year, and we can't really miss at any position in the draft. Like, it's just one of those years.
Right. And I think his opening press conference pretty much laid the blueprint there as far as what we want to do as a team in the draft. He started to preach a little bit when he said, hey, you don't often go for needs. Sometimes you just got to take the best guy that's there. That's the formula. And he utilized him as an example, but that's a formula that Ozzie Newsome has been, he made a career on as a general manager. So it'll be interesting to see how they go going forward in that particular strategy in the upcoming draft.
And it's definitely not a formula that the old regime utilized very well. Like, to a point where I almost have shell shock of what is our need. You know what I'm saying? Because that seemed to be, how TD drafted. And the one curveball you got, at least that I can remember, is Calvin Ridley, like being, a guy that we didn't need per se.
Right. I think if you're in a situation like that, it's fine to approach your draft and say, hey, I want to address my needs. It's fine. But the Falcons made it seem so obvious. You knew every year who they wanted to go after, how they wanted to go after them. At times it worked. They got their guys. Big Beasley, Tack McKinley, they got their guys. But there are times where you don't want to. They showed their hand a lot when to the draft. I would say another curveball was Keanu Neal. But at the same time, you kind of knew going into that draft, they're going to be looking for Seattle-style players. Again, you still knew what they were looking for. You just didn't know exactly when they were going to get them. With this previous regime, the way they started so far, it still remains to be seen because they haven't drafted yet, of course. But they're looking like they're going into this draft thinking or wanting 31 teams to think, what the hell are they going to do? I don't know what they're going to do. And to me, that's when you draft the best. You don't know what teams are thinking. You may want to force them to jump the gun a little bit and make So I think they're in that situation right now.
And I think that the timing of what you're saying is impeccable, because we're kind of at like Draft House version 6.0 on our show, right? And we've gone kind of every angle under the sun. We drafted Penei Sewell, we mocked a Zach Wilson, we mocked a Kyle Pitts, all guys who could come in and make this team better. Now, to be honest with you, while we're talking about it, we got the fans going last week because we mocked old JF1 to the Atlanta Falcons, and we did it. We stood on it. We mocked him. Here's the thing. We mocked him from the standpoint that ultimately you ask yourself, and here's the thing. This is to spark the conversation, because ultimately you're absolutely right. No one knows what the Falcons are going to do, to your point. And I think that it's important that they do, this is the year where we need to be extremely poker faced, because we have a lot of gaps. And to be honest with you, there are a couple players, which I know we'll touch on a little bit later in the show, that I think can fill those gaps. So you're absolutely right. It's best player available, but what players that are there as every draft that can fill those gaps? And again, we can agree to disagree to what those gaps are, which I know we'll touch on that. And as I bring it over to JR, but to me, that's just something that's really, really important with this team, because, when you have a new regime, because now is that time. It's like, who are these Arthur Smith players? Who is a Dean Pease type of player, as we look at these bills? Because Keanu Neal was very much a Dan Quinn type of player. So,
and that scheme in particular, it was really narrowed for a certain type of player. I think with Dean Pease's scheme, you can kind of go various routes. I mean, they may go big corner. They don't necessarily, even though they played Kareem Jackson, not Kareem Jackson, Adoree Jackson played a ton of snaps on the outside over the past couple of years, and he's not known as your big 6'2", 190-pound corner. So they may go various directions with that. But real quick before we get started, but the thing that came to me when it came to evaluating the draft strategy of Quinn and Dimitroff, over the years, I usually do about 5 or 6 mock drafts before the draft.
Yeah.
I nailed on my final mock draft, literally for the past 3 or 4 years, I nailed certain players in every draft. And it got to the point to where I started really figuring out who they were going to get. I nailed Keanu. I nailed Dion. I nailed Michael Walker last year. I nailed Grant Hennessy last year. It's just, you figure them out over a while. You're like, okay, they only want this type of guy, and they're probably going to get him here. And that's what happened. And now it's a lot more intriguing because honestly, I have an idea what they may do, but just the way Fontenot's talking, I'm not going to say Jamar Chase is completely off the board.
Come on, man. Come on. Keep it going, baby. I love it.
It's there.
It's there. I know the chances are low, but the way he's talking like, hey, man, look, we may take Chase and just say, what's good? You guys want to play Julio, Chase, and Calvin Ridley? I don't. It's there, man.
So before I give it back to JR, one more thing on that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that you nailed it, because what we are going to figure out over the next couple of months, like you said, or like we talked about before, these Arthur Smith and Dean Pease type of players, that is the mark of the new regime. Because you're absolutely right. I love that you brought up the example about Adoree Jackson, because you're absolutely right. We always have this prototypical 6'1", 205-pound, 210-pound cornerback, but Adoree Jackson is an athlete. So I think ultimately a Dean Pease showing the ability to use somebody like an Adoree Jackson, Logan Ryan, these type of corners, I'll be really interested to see how these Falcons model that kind of stuff. Because Dean Pease, I'll be honest with you, he will turn this defense around. I'm not willing to say it'll be top 10, but it'll look much more functional. Hey, you're a Falcons fan like us. I think those, they got there a second too late, those type of plays will be gone. The Robert Alford grabbing, poor technique consistently, hopefully those will be gone. But again, we haven't been able to dive deep into this yet, so I'm gonna push it back over to Jared, because you feel me. You know it. We've all lived it.
I'm right there.
It's
there
going
with
to
you.
be extremely interesting. I did a small film study on Pease, trying to get an idea of what type of coordinator and stuff that he is, and looking back at his time at Baltimore and back at his time at Tennessee, he's gonna make use out of the best players he's got, and it's hard to break down what his prototypical, like you said, you could do that with Quinn. You knew what Quinn needed, right, to make it work. With Dean Pease, it looks like he can make it work with what he's got, which is something that interests me. So let's get into the actual draft talk, I guess you could say. I don't know. I'm try to put this back on rails, if there is even rails at all. But who were some of the guys that stood out to you at the Senior Bowl, whether it be the ones who won at practice, or if you've had time to go back and watch the game, the ones who may have done well in practice and put it in play, kind of deal?
Right. I had an opportunity to go back and look over my notes after the game on Saturday. And regardless, what side of the ball, or just guys that stood out in particular?
Like guys who stood out, or maybe guys who stood out in practice and then stood out in the game, kind of deal, or the ones who maybe started off the week struggling and then got better as the coaching, the ones you could tell took the coaching well, so to speak.
Right. We started off pre-show talking about it, but Richie Grant was the one guy that stood out amongst a lot of DBs throughout the week. He didn't really have the Richie Grant type game, but I can tell you right now, Richie Grant owned about 2 practices. There was only 3 practices during the week. 2 of the practices, he was the best defender on the field. Not best DB, not best safety.
Best defender,
best defender on the field. the instincts were there. The ball scares were there. This guy was covering everything from slants. He was being able to read every single opposing quarterback. They put him in several different spots. They had him lined up single high free safety. They had him lined up cover two safety, playing deep. They had him lined up at slot corner. They had him lined up at boundary corner on both sides, left and right. He caught 2 interceptions on Jamie Newman on the final day of practice. One of them came against Kadarius Toney one-on-one in the red zone. This guy was everywhere, man, and he doesn't have the athleticism you want for a free safety. He definitely doesn't give those how can I say it? Those Earl Thomas type vibes, I guess, or even nowadays with guys like Justin Simmons from Denver. He doesn't give those type of vibes where he can literally make that mouth, that jaw dropping play because of his athleticism. But what's going to keep him in the league for 10 years is what he has up here, and his ability to understand where the quarterback is going beforehand. That's what stands out on paper about him.
So let me ask you a question, and I do want to put you a little bit on the spot right now because pound for pound ATL, we like to put you a little bit on the spot. Let me ask you this question though. In terms of Richie Grant, right? Let's talk about him because he's a guy that's a favorite of mine. Big Jimbo Slice, he's a favorite of Jimbo Slice as well. I like a guy that's a bit of a gambler at free safety. And the first thing that we love about him at pound for pound ATL is he is a true safety. He is not a cornerback that we're trying to convert to safety. He is a true safety. We love it. But let me ask you this, because I was looking for what is the differentiator for Richie Grant. What makes this guy not the next DeMonte Casey? And I'll stop there.
The fact that he doesn't gamble in coverage is what doesn't make him DeMonte. The thing with DeMonte, now DeMonte played corner, of course, at San Diego State. He led the country in interceptions. I believe it was his junior year.
Yeah, ball hawk. Yes, sir.
But he made that transition from corner to safety. Now, early on, you saw some of those traits where you see, okay, that's what made him lead the country in picks. This guy is always able to get his hands on plays. But also at times, he really gets stuck in coverage because he's still sort of transitioning as a free safety. Now, I saw a couple plays like that on film from Richie Grant, but I didn't see that at all during Senior Bowl week from Richie Grant. I think that's one worry I really wouldn't have to ponder on with Richie. When it comes to coverage, making a smart play in coverage, reading the play, I will not have to worry about that. What comes into play with Richie, I don't love his tackling right now. He really needs to improve on that. But the Falcons kind of got by with that with Thomas Deku.
Thomas Deku didn't want to tackle nobody.
But Thomas Deku was always making fourth quarter interceptions, when they needed it. And I think that's what Richie Grant is. I think this year Richie Grant is the Antoine Winfield of this draft. That guy that has some flaws, has some deficiencies, is obvious, but man, you can't teach that playmaking ability. One thing that really stood out about me about Antoine Winfield last year, he not only made plays. Go back, look at his college film. A lot of the plays he made, second half, they're nursing the lead. They need a big play. Antoine Winfield was there, literally every time. I can go back. There's so many interceptions that he's had where it's like, oh my God, they needed that, and he was the one that came through. Richie Grant did the same thing.
I couldn't agree more because I watched a lot of Central Florida because, they're one of those schools out of Florida that always intrigues me in terms of the way, they're always competitive. They always keep good players. And I mean, Florida is just a fertile ground for just football players. It's just, it doesn't matter the major city. There are some football players there. And I think I'm glad you kind of spoke a little bit about the differences between KZ and Grant because I think that that's important. And I think, ultimately, if we got a true cover guy who can cover that deep half, and help us in a league where this is a very spread league. We need a ball hog at free safety. And again, to be honest with you, we can give up some of the tackling, to be honest with you. DPs, I'm sure that he'll have the guys blitzing and, multiple enough that, hey, if we're not able to have a tackling free safety, which is a luxury, to be honest with you, free safeties aren't known to just be big hitters. If you got one, great, but they're known to cover that field. To me, that's kind of what I've been feeling about Richie Grant lately, because him, Trevon Moehrig, these guys, it's a position where that's a gap, and it's a position where we absolutely have to find a starter out of this draft. And I think that Richie Grant is actually, I think that's good for the fans, because I think that they've been clamoring for him. They've been asking about him the last couple of shows.
If you're sitting you got your GM hat on, you're sitting up in the up in the war room, up in Flowery Branch, when are you pulling the trigger on Richie Grant? So
top half of the second
we're
round.
Sitting there at our second round pick. We've picked, I don't know, we'll go crazy and say we picked a quarterback with 4, right? And for all those who are clamoring to replace a future Hall of Famer, we're gonna we'll pick a quarterback at 4, and then we're sitting there and our second pick comes around. You'd be comfortable taking Grant there?
I'm fine with this team taking any type of playmaker on defense. I don't care the position. They just need those type of guys.
Yeah. Every position.
The only group on this defense that I feel somewhat comfortable with going into this 2021 season is the linebacker core, and that's about it. And that's not even a strong comfort.
But you wouldn't turn away from taking a guy like Micah Parsons.
No, I would take Michael Parsons in a heartbeat.
No.
Oh, I know some fans are.
Some fans want to. We're good at linebacker. Let's skip Micah Parsons.
No, JR, you go first on that, because I want to hear what you feel about Micah Parsons. But we got some strong feelings.
I'm going to do a Falcon Eye view on Michael Parsons before this draft comes up, but. No, sir. You don't walk away from a freak like that. I don't care how many you got, right? You put Can you imagine a lineup where you got Deion Jones and Foye Oluokun in the middle with Michael Walker and Michael Parsons on the outside?
That's what I was thinking with the.
That's where we go. Yeah.
Because one of Parsons' biggest attributes is his ability to blitz. Imagine how much a luxury that would be to blitz Parsons and still drop Deion and Oluokun.
Or confuse the crap out of an opposing QB, because both Michael Walker and Micah Parsons can cover just as well. So now you could bring Foye and Deion in an A-gap, B-gap blitz and drop them two in coverage.
Dude.
So yes, JR, Eric, y'all killing it. I love it, because ultimately, Eric, see, the thing about it is pound for pound family, they're going to look at me this week. This is where the comments start getting rolling, because I just mocked Justin Fields last week. They're thinking I'm all Justin Fields. Trust me, I took a lot of flack. For that. And that's fine. I took a lot of flack for that. But if you're really going to pull my card right now, who I'm really most excited about in this Falcons defense is a Micah Parsons. Let me tell you why. Really quick, when I look at a lot of his film, what I like about him is, you touched on it, is when you look at a lot of his blitzes, they come from up the middle. You look at a lot of the plays where he wreaked havoc, he's another linebacker that can blitz up the middle, that gives us that outside versatility to blitz on the outside. Because if I'm honest, let's just go ahead and have this conversation right now, because I know we'll touch on it a little bit later, but I got to know how you feel about this. There is honestly, other than Azeez Ojulari, Mike Dub said it, I'm on record, other than Azeez Ojulari, there's really not another pass rusher that I'm ultra confident about. I want this guy in the first round. Now, what I feel like would happen is, with DMPs, pressure will look a little bit different. It'll look a lot like we saw in the second half of the season with Oluokun blitzing, with Deion Jones blitzing, this kind of stuff. So instead of having the next whoever, Tech McKinley, Vic Beasley, whatever, we'll touch on that another day, another show. What about these linebackers that are versatile? Because again, a lot of people thought that I reached for this guy, but there was another guy, Dylan Moses. Guys like this that can play inside, outside, play all three linebacker positions and get to the quarterback. Those are going to be our friends in this draft. I'll stop there, because I know you guys are chomping at it.
My thing with Micah is, and I don't get how the fans are against it, but he's the best defender,
Yep.
period, in the draft. Why would you say no
what
to
gets
that?
me
I
is you
don't
have fans
care
who are
where he plays.
against Parsons, but wanted Isaiah Simmons last year. You see what I'm saying? Because they wanted Isaiah
So
Simmons because he
okay,
could play
so
safety and linebacker and edge defender and all this other business. But they don't want Parsons this year because he's not a true edge defender.
I don't get it.
It doesn't make
right,
much sense
get
to me,
it.
right.
right?
I don't, you don't take you don't worry about taking the guy that is being compared
You
to
take
Luke
him.
Kuechly. You take him and you say, you know what? We'll work whatever we need to
figure it
work out later on
because
down the line.
look, especially when you talk about the defensive coordinator who coached Ray Lewis, who coached
Right.
Jayon Brown, who coached Teddy Bruschi.
Right.
If you don't think this man don't know how to use a linebacker, Gerard Mayo, thank you.
Gerard Mayo. It's just going back to what I said earlier. I feel this defense.
That's right.
They just need difference makers.
Figure it
It
out
doesn't
from
matter
there.
what position.
Yep.
I'm not one that's going to turn my
You
nose
can't
up
at
to
this
taking
point.
a guy at a position that may not be. They need guys. They don't have anybody
You
that
just
can make
cut
a play. They
Pat
haven't.
McKinley.
They haven't had
Yeah.
that type of difference maker in so long. I mean, how many games have we seen? It's fourth quarter. They got a lead. You just need somebody on the defense to make a play. They don't have that type of guy here now.
Hey, and one more thing. We don't have. Let me tell you something. Deion Jones is arguably our most consistent, most athletic, explosive playmaker. But what we don't have, again, if we add to this, we have a guy with actually outside linebacker, defensive end measurables right here at the number 4 position. So I think that Micah Parsons pick, 6'3", 250 pounds, sideline to sideline, can blitz, utilize him in the outside. That's why, honestly, we wanted to wait on Micah Parsons because we like him so much that we wanted to give him his own just due. But this is why it's starting to make a little bit too much sense, though, right? It's starting to, like, as we look at best player available.
And with a guy like Dean Pease and how versatile this defense can be, especially in the front seven, I would not be surprised if he's pounding the table for Michael Parsons.
Like I said before, you look at the production. You go back, and anybody who's got a free minute, there's a great website. It's called Pro Football Reference. It is free to use, and it gives you tons of stats of everything. You go back and look at where the production. If you are very convinced that you need somebody to sack the quarterback, you go back and look at a Dean Pease production and see where it came from.
Right.
It came from the linebacker position.
Yeah.
And you say, oh, well, he runs a 3-4. Of course it comes from a linebacker. Yeah, true. Exactly. Yes, it comes from the linebacker. What's up?
I got a question. JR, just because this is actually non-draft, but actually, as I think about it, as we talk about Dean Pease, how do you see Dean Pease helping Falcohoilc potentially take his game to the next level? Because I think Ulbrich just had him humming, moving, forcing fumbles, freaking nature. How do you see Dean
Pease is going to build on what Ulbrich was doing with him, both him and Deion.
Right.
You go back and look at that was the one reason why I was like, if there's one coach that we retain, I would have had no problem retaining Ulbrich because of the production that he was able to get out of Deion Jones and Falcohoilc. Like, he had those guys playing with so much confidence and in the right place to succeed, calling blitzes at great times that, Deion Jones led our team in sacks at 7. Deion Jones. Now, look, don't get me wrong. I know we cut Tack McKinley because he can't keep his head straight, and we didn't re-sign Vic Beasley. I get it. But he had more sacks than Dante Fowler. He had more sacks than Charles Harris. Both of those guys, first-round pass rushers, by the way. And Deion Jones, because of the way Ulbrich used him, had more sacks. And Foye wasn't that far behind him.
I think that's what Pease is going to do with those two guys. He's going to have those guys pretty much freelancing for the most part. He's going to put them in various spots. He's not going to have him be stagnant. He knows he's already go back to his opening press conference. What is one thing that he said about the defense that he took away from it? He said they like to run, they like to hit. So that's what we're going to do. And I think with those two guys, that's what he's going to allow them to, to drop back in coverage, because that's one of their strong suits. He's going to send them on a blitz. But again, when you add a different wrinkle like a Micah Parsons, and you give that to a coach like Dean Pease, I think Pease is like, oh my God,
candy,
I'm taking candy from a baby on every Sunday. Like, it's just, but to go back to your Senior Bowl question.
Off rails are gone.
Oh, yeah.
Way up. Richie Grant was definitely one of those guys that stood out to me during Senior Bowl week. I really, and I know this may not be a position in need, but I really was impressed with a lot of receivers that were there during Senior Bowl week. Amari Rogers is another one that stood out to me.
Yeah, I watched that game yesterday, and he looked real tough.
This guy is going to have a 10 to 12 year career where he's just making clutch third down catches, key third down catches. They had him lined up on both sides on the outside, but I think he really in the slot. And the one thing that he did that a lot of quarterbacks relied on during the Senior Bowl week, he found these soft spots in these zones. I know he's 5'9" or 5'10" at the most. Man, can he high point a football?
Nice.
He will out jump a defender if he has to. And I learned during the week he has a 40-inch vertical. That makes sense. He's the guy can go get it. Okay, so he was definitely a playmaker during the week. I really like Sage Surratt out of Wake Forest. 6'2", 215. 6'2", 215. Living here in the city of Charlotte, the Surratt name is royalty.
Okay.
So you knew all about Sage before Senior Bowl practice. But the one thing about this guy that stood out, man, can he make contested catches? There's no such thing as it not being his ball when it's in the vicinity. He's going to go get it.
So pause, because he mentioned Sage Surratt. So we got to stop. We got to talk about it because he is a guy. If there is any other receiver that I want in an Atlanta Falcons uniform, Sage Surratt is the guy. I'll tell you why. Because in our Super Bowl year, the way we utilize Mohamed Sanu is a way that I think we could utilize Sage Surratt, right? I think this guy immediately comes in, makes the contested catches, is able to go over the middle, give Matt Ryan that safety blanket. Because let's be honest, outside of Julio Jones, our receivers are a little bit small. For lack of better words, a little bit, just a little bit. Laquan Treadwell, I think he came in, played good in spells, in spots, but ultimately, what we expected Laquan Treadwell to do was be that guy, right? We weren't able to get that out of him for whatever reason, and I do think that if Surratt is one of those guys that over the next couple of months, his interviews, it wouldn't surprise me to see him as a third round, second round guy. Because I think that being a UGA guy, being a guy that follows a lot of Georgia Bulldogs football, when I first studied Jamie Newman, I was like, okay, what makes Jamie Newman so good? And my God, if I didn't turn on the tape and see the passes that he made to Surratt and said, oh my gosh, this is a connection that I could see Matt Ryan utilizing. And this is a guy that could literally come in, and it wouldn't surprise me to see him with 700 or 800 yards receiving his first year, just because he does everything you ask him to do. He comes from, as Eric alluded to, great football family. He does everything that you ask him to do. To go to Wake Forest, you got to be a smart kid anyway. So those are the kind of guys that I want. Smart football players who are tough and want to play. So that Surratt guy, I hope this name came up. Chaz Surratt as well is another guy I've been hearing getting a lot of buzz also. But Sage Surratt is definitely a guy that we definitely got to keep on our radar as well, for sure, Falcons Nation.
Oh, yeah. The one thing about Sage, though, during the Senior Bowl, he couldn't separate to save his life.
Yeah, but that's not his game.
Even it's not. And the times that he did separate, it was an obvious push off. And I mean, he was stiff-arming the like, come on,
doing his best, Derrick Henry.
So basically. So that's the one thing that stood out about him. Now, I know fans are probably wanting to know about edge rushers that stood out during Senior Bowl week. There's one guy who really, he looked like an NFL player out there with college guys. Dalen Hayes out of Notre Dame, 6'5", roughly 250, 260. He looked when I say he looked prepared, he looked ready. I'll be damned. He looked ready. Okay. Now I'm not going to say he's a day 1 or day 2 pick. He's probably going to fall end of day 2, maybe early day 3. But he was beating offensive tackles in various ways. Speed, love his speed to power conversion. There were times they threw him on the interior. He was beating guards left and right with swim moves. Like I said, real big guy, 6'5", 260, long arms, really good get off at the snap. And I think that's a name to keep an eye on the radar. The big question with him is, can he play standing up? That's what you're kind of wondering. You didn't really see a whole lot of that during Senior Bowl week, but now you're kind of wondering. I think he proved he can put his hand in the ground.
But can he stand up and do it?
Can he stand up full time?
What about the pass rusher out of Pitt? I'm trying to remember his name. Patrick
Weaver?
The other one.
Patrick Weaver or the other one?
Yeah,
Patrick Jones.
The other one, yeah.
Man, I remember when you mentioned those guys that struggled at practice but had a better game. Patrick,
he was one of those
that
guys.
Category. He had a pretty disappointing practice week. But in the game, I think he had 2 sacks in the game. He looked completely different. The one thing about him, he was used in various ways as well, and I couldn't help but get, as far as just his frame and his size, I couldn't help but get Jadeveon Clowney vibes because he looked exactly like Jadeveon Clowney out there, just long, one of those linear pass rushers that's able to. You would think he's able to beat guys in various ways, but he didn't show it. I saw way too many times he was pancaked a lot during the week.
Okay.
So while we're freezing, while we're talking about it, there's one guy that I think that we got to talk about, and I need to know from you because we've been getting a lot of questions about this guy the last 3 to 4 weeks, and you were there.
Okay.
This is a huge question for Falcons Nation because this is a position of need. We talk about all these positions of need, but the running game, the running back position. We have not talked about the running back position. Now, I have heard the name Ramondre Stevenson.
That guy is
at least 10 times from Oklahoma. Can we talk about him? Can we touch on him? What did you see? How does he fit in the Falcons? How can Arthur Smith utilize this guy? I am all ears because this is probably the $1 million question in Falcon Nation right now.
Okay, well, let me, because I know they've been asking about Najee. So let me get into Najee.
Okay, yeah. Please.
I think I saw 3 carries from Najee.
You weren't gonna see much from him.
He practiced, if you want to call it that.
He talked to people is what he did. He come down and talked to people.
He was there. He had a jersey.
He put on the pads. He had the helmet on. He might have had 3 carries the entire week. But that was it. He didn't play, obviously. You didn't really see much from him. But I don't think you really need to see a whole lot from him. Ramondre Stevenson. Great question. Because I'll be honest with you guys. I think he was the best running back on the field throughout the week.
Okay, because look, you might be messing with what I'm gonna do because I was zeroing in on Michael Carter.
I think he went from 6th, 7th round guy to a late 3rd round ceiling right now. He improved his status that much during the week.
I'll have to go back and watch the tape on him.
I think he was. During practice week, I think he was the best running back.
I love him. I love his game.
He's not the fastest. He's not the biggest. But he runs behind his pads. He's a physical back. He's looking for contact. But he can also make you have a nice little wiggle or two and escape a tackle that way. I loved him in blitz pickup drills. And there was one point, I think it was the very first practice. Man, I would say about 45 minutes after practice started, he got a carry, sprinted up the middle, finished the play or whatever, stopped at midfield, took his helmet off, threw up, put his helmet back on, got back in the huddle.
All right, yeah.
Whoa. That is, hey, listen, Listen, let's pause. Ramondre, see, we're getting all fired up. See, we didn't use it, JR. It took us 40, I don't know, however long we've been in this
There you
NFL
go.
before we used the word fired up. But that got me fired up from the perspective of we talk about gaps, right?
Yeah.
Able to pick up.
Blitzes.
You said a guy, first of all, when you talked about a guy able to pick up the blitz.
Hey, Devontae.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Whoa.
You said
There
it.
we go. You lost. You know, I almost stopped. I'll say, JR, end the show right now because a running back that can pick up a blitz that is on the Falcons' radar, like I said, I'm glad you touched on him because I think to your point, the running back position is, again, that's another position where you may see a rookie starter for the Falcons because this is a good draft. That's good for running backs. I think, like you said, Stevenson, JR brought up Michael Carter, who I think had a
As far as the game,
freaking
went,
Senior Bowl.
he was the one that popped out
you know,
to me as far as running backs.
Yeah. And we
I think he was the second best running back during the week, Michael Carter.
And see, so Falcons Nation, I think as we pause and we look at this, right? We look at, hey, round 2, 3, 4, ultimately this is like most years. This is a year that is extremely strong at the running back position because, but I will tell you this though. It looks like it's a strong running back class, but it does appear that we might need to get our running back in rounds 2 through 4. And I think with Stevenson starting to rise, we're going to need guys like this that can be difference makers. And I think the Carters, the Javonte Williams, these are guys that are all difference makers. But this is a year where you got to get your guy early. Like we always talk about with the opt outs, with COVID, with the lack of spring practice. There are so many mitigating factors this year that if you got a guy, you see a guy, you might need to get that guy.
Yeah. He improved his draft stock a lot. Even in catching the ball out of the backfield, he was pretty solid in that aspect as well. The one thing that you worry about him is enduring a 16-game schedule because he wasn't the guy at Oklahoma, so he never really had to carry that torch.
That's right.
So. And you also feel that he's kind of capped out almost as far as frame wise and what he brings to the table in that aspect. So what goes along with that is he going to have that season, that rookie season, where around week 10 or 11 you see the he's going to gas out.
Yeah,
that's the concern. That's the one thing. But he answered enough questions during Senior Bowl week to make me believe that he literally went from late day 3 to a guy that I would not be surprised if towards the end of round 3, you hear him call.
Cool. Yeah. Well, gentlemen, we are getting close to bumping up on an hour. We're at about 47 minutes or so. Don't want to keep Mr. Robinson too much longer. Mike, you got any like closing questions before we really put him on a spot here? Because I'm going to make you draft somebody for the Falcons. But,
well, no, I think that at a high level, because I'm more with JR. We're ready to put you on the spot, but I will say this: I think it is good to see like-minded, passionate Falcons, and especially with your bird's eye. Literally, check out the bird's eye view by JR. But your bird's eye view of being at the Senior Bowl, I think gives these Falcon fans a lot to really help us in the area, which is to kind of squash the hypotheticals. It's like you see it. You get that vantage point that not a lot of people are able to see. So for that, we at Pound for Pound Family. Trust me, the fans are going to love it because you're giving them something to kind of feed their appetite, which is something that, again, you feed our appetite as well. So that part is appreciated. But again, JR got some other questions for you. So I'm going to let JR talk to you. That's the hardest working man in the show.
All right. As we do, the whole point of Draft House is to be like our mock draft, right? We draft a couple guys every week. That's the format that Jimmy and Mike have used, and I don't want to go away from that. So I'm going to put you on the spot as I step out of frame and close this door before my family comes in. Who are you drafting at number 4?
Jesus. Who's on the board? Do I have a? I get a
okay. Gerald walked away, but I got you.
All right.
On number 4. Okay, so let me tell you something. On the board right now, Penei Sewell is off of the board because here's the thing. Here's my thought process. But why I take Penei Sewell off the board? I really feel like Robert Saleh likes his quarterback.
Yes.
Robert Saleh knows that to give his quarterback a friend, He's going to get that Samoan freak of nature, Panay Sewell,
Yes.
and he is going to have his left side done. Now,
Yeah.
with Panay Sewell off of the board, we got a team full of knees, like you said. Where do you go, good sir?
Best quarterback or best defender available?
So,
you know what? Go ahead, JR.
Here's my theory. Here's my theory about quarterback, because I know fans are like, Matt Ryan still has some juice. That is true. Matt Ryan can still play. But this new regime is not handcuffed to Matt Ryan. They didn't draft Matt Ryan. They didn't give Matt Ryan his free agency contract. They're just now introducing themselves to Matt Ryan. So they're not committed to Matt Ryan for the next 5 years. Normally, when you get a new regime in, they're going to want their guy at some point. May not be year one, but with Matt LaFleur getting Jordan Love last year, yeah, he had Aaron Rodgers in tow. But did he not go get his guy?
No.
Because he knew post Aaron Rodgers was going to come at some point. Might as well prepare for it. I think the Falcons are in position right now. If I'm the GM, if I'm my best case scenario is they take Parsons or they trade down. But me knowing that a new regime, rookie head coach, rookie you cannot take it off the table. I know that Ryan is a great quarterback. Yes, he's still good. He has some years left in him. But again, he's 36, or he'll be 36 when the season starts. Please, if you honestly sit here and think that just because Tom Brady played to 43, that so can Matt Ryan, you're delusional, because Tom Brady is just
that's right.
He's a phenomenon. That's just a one-in-a-lifetime thing, okay? Just let it go. But I don't think you take that off the table. But if I'm sitting at 4 right now, best quarterback available or best defender.
No, that's good. I'll be fine with that somewhat of a vague answer and then not nailing it down per se.
So you want okay? All right. You know what? Sis, if you want one,
at least one.
You got to give us one.
Michael Parsons.
Michael Parsons.
Michael Parsons.
Done.
Done. And I don't care. I don't care if people are saying we're good at linebacker.
Right.
I don't give a damn. Look at what now we can have 3 all-pro linebackers.
We can have. I'll take the D's. Mike, who you taking this week at 4? I'm gonna pigeonhole you to 4. Y'all did a trade down, and when Jimmy comes back, y'all can do a trade down again.
You know what?
I'm gonna pigeonhole you at 4 this week.
I'll be honest with you. It's Micah Parsons, because it's always been Micah Parsons. So if I'm honest, yes, I gave y'all Justin Fields last week, pound for pound, family. You know why I gave you Justin Fields? Because we really got to think transformative in our mindset.
Yes.
If this is a new regime, stop thinking everything is the way that it used to be. Let me tell you something. You know who is not walking through that door? Mike Smith. You know who else is not walking through that door? Dan Quinn. You know who is walking through that door? Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith. So because I trust that they're going to look around. They're going to look at this organization. They're going to communicate with guys and see if they're best fit for how they're going to get paid. Because let's be honest with you, Arthur Smith, like we talk about, JR, Arthur Smith is a guy, he's not really hurting for money. But let me tell you something. You know what he wants to do? Protect his money. So he's gonna put guys on his team who are going to protect his money. Ultimately, like I said, this week it is Micah Parsons. I love the versatility that Micah Parsons brings. I think that Micah Parsons is a guy that could be a Falcon for 10 years. The only problem I have about Micah Parsons is he gives me, if you listen to his interviews, and I'm going to tell you some pound for pound, family, go look at his interviews. He gives me slight Tech McKinley vibes a little bit. You know what I mean? In terms of, is this guy really wired to come in and be an all-pro linebacker for the next 10 years? It's important. Not to say that this is football. It's football we're talking about. You don't need to be a rocket scientist. But ultimately, we need to make sure that the guy is capable of being locked down and locked in to what we're trying to do in this organization, because we got a great, I'm liking the general manager. I'm liking our head coach. I'm liking the experience we have as on the defensive coordinator side of the ball. We've not had that. Ultimately, like I said, we kind of got used to Dan Quinn. We kind of got used to a Richard Smith or whoever the hell he was before Dan Quinn took his position. we are in a position now where, okay, this is what Fontenot, Smith, Pease lead us. Right. This week, Micah Parsons.
I think I'm going to make it a trifecta. Early on in this draft process, I was keyed in on Parsons. Then I've kind of let some of the talk like persuade me to maybe we should draft a quarterback. But I think this week I'm gonna stick to my original guns, and uh, Parsons is a guy who I think can take our already solid strength of the defense, which is the linebacking core, and make it the the calling card, of
Yeah.
this defense, right? And I think that's something that would give Dean Pease the versatility that he says he wants, and I think it's something that could end up being a major boon.
One terminology that I heard a lot during Senior
Yeah.
Bowl week was chess
Mm.
piece.
Yep.
When it comes to defenders.
Yep.
And those guys are so valuable in today's
That's
game.
it.
Isaiah Simmons, that
Yeah,
chess
it's
piece
that
last year.
positionless player.
That's right.
Hamza
Exactly.
Nasruddin out of Florida State is another chess.
Mhm.
Love him.
I think Micah Parsons can be a chess piece in this particular scheme because of his ability to play pretty much all four
There you
linebacker
go.
positions. Or at least
And last thing on that, and you ask yourself, if we lost a lot of our games by 7 points or less, could we use a chess
Yeah.
piece? Is that a fair question?
absolutely.
Could we use a chess piece?
He's the
In
difference maker.
some cases, that chess piece is like
Yep.
they are. In some cases, that chess piece is the
That's
difference
it. It's
maker.
the difference maker.
It's that ability when it's fourth and goal or it's 4th and 5, and you need to stop,
Absolutely.
and you got a guy that's he can play. You can put him wherever you need to. Hey, Micah, you know what? This is what I need you to do. I need you to disguise a A-gap blitz because I'm going to slip Dion behind you because I feel they're gonna come with the drag route.
Yep.
Next thing you know, Dion comes with an interception. Want to know why?
Because
Because he put Parsons in blitz and he got his best coverage linebacker dropping deep.
I mean, that's that's the thing, and that's the reason why I reach out to you initially is because of that statement right there.
Straight up.
Not because you picked Parsons, but the knowledge that you come with.
The why.
Right, exactly.
It's your why.
And
it's your why.
So as we wrap up here, Eric, do you want to let people know where they can find you, where they can read your work, where they can haunt you and bug you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at _Eric_Robinson. Look at my stuff on Falcohoilc. I am working on my second mock draft right now. It will probably be out sometime this week. Be on the lookout for that. I definitely will probably have a Super Bowl preview coming up on Tackler Media this weekend as well. Be on the lookout for that. But yeah, you can find me there, man. And I'm tweeting. It's still kind of sort of the beginning of draft season, so I'm a little everywhere when it comes to the tweets right now. So I'm tweeting about draft and music, and like y'all was talking about. I'm very nostalgic. So
nothing wrong with that.
In my high school last night, but yeah, find me there.
We very much appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to come on and chat with us and chop it up with us and give us an insight of what you saw down there at Mobile. But as always, Falcons fans, you can find me on Twitter. I'm at Grim1128. That's GRIMM1128. Mike?
Yeah, and you can find your boy, Big Mike Dub, man. Mike Dub, MIKE_DUB. Please give our guy Eric Robinson a follow. We've always been, like I said, fans first. Definitely always followed your content. I believe we quoted you on the show a couple of weeks ago. You guys always are a good foundational point for where we get a lot of our, boots to the ground. Appreciate you taking time out for pound ATL because, again, we're a growing place, but let me tell you something. We got some of the most passionate Dirty Bird fans anywhere in content land, and we appreciate you for taking time out of your busy schedule to spend time with us. I always love it.
You guys bringing me on, man. This was definitely fun.
And as always, Falcons fans, rise up.
Rise